Now the reason why I wanted to start with this presentation, World Cup in this presentation, there's two reasons actually. So the first reason and the main reason is that for me, this product here, it typifies personalised supply chains of the future. That's the main reason why I wanted to show you this product today. Second reason is, I think this is probably the closest I'm ever going to get to lifting the World Cup in front of 300 people. So thank you very much for indulging me in that. So we're here today to talk about Industry 4.0. Just lost the clicker. Sorry, I lost the clicker. We're here today to talk about Industry 4.0. Now for me this is a fantastic term, Industry 4.0. And I don't know about you, but I've heard recently people talking about supply chain 4.0, manufacturing 4.0. It seems in fact that you can put 4.0 on the end of everything and it becomes more exciting, more innovative and more sexy. So before I start talking about personalised supply chains, I wanted to start by just talking about what I see as Industry 4.0. And I think actually there's three key components to it in my view. So the first key component to Industry 4.0 is software. I think we all see that we are living through and we continue to live through a digital revolution. Companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Twitter, they're changing the way we work, they're changing the way we buy, they're changing the way we live. And these companies, they're huge, we all know this. And I think with some of the technologies and the things that we're hearing about today, they will continue to change our lives. Whether that's through blockchain, 5G, machine learning, all of these different elements, this software element will become and continue to be a key part of Industry 4.0. One thing that we often, I think, overlook when we start thinking about these large companies, these large software companies, is how important the manufacturing element is that's enabled them to become so big. So the second part that I think of Industry 4.0 is the manufacturing part. Because without manufacturing, some of those huge companies, software companies, they wouldn't be the same size or scale that they are today. And I guess the most obvious manufactured product that I can think of is this thing. Without this, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, I'm convinced they wouldn't be as big today as they would be without these. And it's not just those products, these are the tangible ones that we all touch and feel in our pockets. But behind that product, there's a whole wealth of telecoms, infrastructure products behind that. Whether that's base stations, satellites, cables, antennas, and I know how much manufactured products are behind it, because as Panalpina, we build them, we install them, we ship them around the world. So for me, software and manufacturing, that's two key elements of Industry 4.0. And these are the ones that you'll all hear about today. But there's actually a third one that's often ignored, I think, or overlooked, which is just as important, just as big, and changing just as much. And that third element is supply chain. So these are the three key elements, I believe, of Industry 4.0. And now what I'd like to do is just go back to my little World Cup and explain to you why I think this is the future of personalised supply chains. And just explain how these three elements combine to make this product. Now I'm not a designer, I'm not creative, I'm not an engineer, I'm a supply chain guy. But I could actually sit in front of a computer at Cardiff University and I could help co-design this product. The software was available for me to do that. I could make it bigger, I could make it smaller, I could completely change it if I liked. I could change the colour, I could change the material with a piece of software available to me. Not only that, I could click a button, it sent that file into a printer next door. This was a 3D printed product. Sent it next door, they printed it 18 hours later, came out of the machine, they took it to a paint shop, they cleaned it, they painted it gold, they called me, they said, Andy, your product's ready, come and collect it whenever you like. That's why this product for me represents personalised supply chains of the future. It's co-designed by the customer, me, it's produced locally, and the supply chain is designed for my convenience. That's why for me this product is the future of personalised supply chains. Now you might be looking at that and thinking, that's a little bit of a niche product. It might be a little bit of a one-off. But what I'd like to do in this next section, this next slide, is to show to you that's not a one-off. That is the way that the world is going. And not just for products like this, but for all of these products that we see around us today. So I'm going to, on this next slide, just show you a few statistics that we pulled together with Cardiff University, that I think show how much this supply chain element is changing already today, and how much and how fast it's going to change in the future. So before I show you how much it's changed, I guess we've got to think about what was it like before. So before we were talking about Industry 4.0 and all these 4.0 elements. So I want you to imagine that we were in this conference 15 years ago, 20 years ago. What would we have been talking about? What would we have been thinking about? And I think what we'd have been talking about and what we'd have been thinking about is offshoring. Moving manufacturing to the other side of the world. That was the big major trend that's happened for 15, 20 years before we started talking about Industry 4.0. I don't think you need any graphs or statistics to prove that to you. I guess you already see that yourselves, but just in case. There's a graph here of the value of manufactured, just manufactured products, so not services, across the world. And this is what you see between 1992 and 2008. A massive increase as we've moved to global supply chains, long supply chains and manufacturing in Asia. China became the manufacturing plant of the world. I'm sure that graphic doesn't surprise you. There's a million that show the same thing. This next graphic, it surprised me at least, maybe it doesn't surprise you. This next graphic shows the amount of inventory in those supply chains over that same period. So there's an inventory to sales ratio. That for me was an astonishing figure. So as those supply chains got longer and we moved production to the other side of the world, 15, 20 years, inventories kept going down. Now I don't know, is there anyone in the room here who worked in manufacturing or supply chain or retail during this period? Anyone in the room? Congratulations, well done. I think we all deserve a pat on the back. Our supply chains became leaner, more efficient, and we got rid of inventories even though we made them more complex and a lot longer. So well done. I'm going to complete the picture now. It gets a little bit messy because we all know what happened in 2009. There was a huge financial crash. But let me just complete the picture for you. But before I do, just remember that picture there, okay? I'll complete the picture on the top and I'll complete the picture on the bottom. Probably no big surprises. 2009, production, sales dropped, inventories went through the roof. Normal. Still a little bit difficult to interpret that graph, I think. But let me just do this. So this is just the last 5 years. Now that for me demonstrates there's actually something much bigger going on. This is no longer about the financial crash. So if you compare that picture at the top to the picture I showed you before of year-on-year growth of manufacturing, increase, all of a sudden it's stabilised, maybe even dropped. I think there'll be a little bit of a rebound this year, so don't worry too much. But what we're definitely not seeing is that year-on-year growth that we had for the previous 15, 20 years. The other startling figure from my perspective is that bottom one. 15 years we've been decreasing inventories in supply chains, making them faster, leaner, cheaper. All of a sudden, they're going up. Inventories in supply chains are going up. Now I know this because of this graph, but I also know this because Panalpina, we run 200 warehouses around the world and they're all absolutely chock-a-block full of inventory. So from a logistics perspective, it's actually good news. But I also see that that's not sustainable, either for manufacturers or retailers. And I guess it begs the question, what's changed? What's happened in this last 5 years that all of a sudden it's not the same as what we saw 15 years ago? Now we have got lots of researchers, lots of analytics people analysing this to death, making predictions, making forecasts. And I wish I had time to go through it all. But I think actually there is one big thing that's changed in the last 5 years. And it's changed for all of us, I think. And that one big thing, if I had to name it in one, it's e-commerce. That's the big change. And I think it's changed things from two perspectives. It's changed our expectations in terms of speed, and it's changed our expectations in terms of availability and range of products. I don't know why, but all of a sudden, as soon as we buy something online, we expect it to be delivered very, very quickly. And actually, some of the research we've done with Cardiff University, we see when people are buying online, and the little box comes up, and it says this product is going to be delivered in 24 hours. People say, lovely. 48 hours, lovely. 72 hours, I'm going to look somewhere else. That's our turning point now as consumers. 48 hours, that's the maximum we'll accept. Not only that, as consumers now, we have got such a range of companies that we can buy from because of the internet. You go to website 1, can't find it, I look at website 2, website 3, website 4. So the choice we have got is amazing. Now the problem for manufacturers and retailers is trying to meet that expectation. For consumers that want very specific products and have got lots of choice and they want it very quickly. Now at the moment, the only way they've got to do this is to fill their supply chains with inventory. That's the only way today they can meet that expectation. And that's why we're seeing that problem here. So in terms of the challenge of moving to these personalised supply chains that I personally love, that's the challenge. And to give you an idea of the size of that challenge, the economists in our team, they've estimated that is a $1.2 trillion challenge. That's how much the inventories have grown in that period. That's a big challenge. So if that's a challenge, what's the big opportunity? What are companies doing? What are the best companies that we see that we're working with that are responding to that change? Because I said, I don't think that's sustainable. So what I want to show you now is just 2 or 3 examples of companies and how they're responding to this, and customers that we work with. So on the left-hand side, you see the traditional supply chain that's been so successful for all of us for 15, 20 years. Build in Asia, ship it across the world, put it in a warehouse and deliver to us. It's been amazingly fantastic. It's worked brilliantly for 20 years. It no longer works in the e-com world. And when I say e-com, I don't just mean B2C, I also mean B2B. So we're seeing now a massive increase in people demanding, as business people, to be able to buy products online, B2B. So this is not just about B2C. And in fact, the first example I've got is actually from an industrial company that we work with, big industrial telecom manufacturer. And they used to have this model, building it in China, and they moved to this model of distributed manufacturing, where the final product is assembled and built close to local demand. And what they achieved was 2 things. So first of all, their cycle time delivery went from 80 days to 26 days. That, you can imagine the impact on their inventories. That's one. The second thing, they could deliver now faster than the competition in that local market. So their sales went up. Perfect combination. Sales go up, inventories go down. So that's the first example. The second example is companies increasingly using co-design, modular production, 3D printing to allow production in units of 1. And I think the best example of this is actually Adidas. So you might have seen this and you might have looked at this and thought that this is a one-off specialist product. These guys are already doing this on a large scale. They moved production, they closed production down in Vietnam to produce trainers, and they moved it to Germany. Who would have thought of anyone doing that 20 years ago? They moved production from Vietnam to Vietnam to Germany. They introduced 3D printing. You can now go on their website, you can click and design the product that you want, as I could with my World Cup. You click the button, they 3D print it, they deliver it to you very, very quickly. So that's the second big trend that we see is happening. Now the third big trend that we see, it's actually a topic in itself, it's so huge. And the third big trend that we see is this transition away from the old take, make, dispose linear supply chains that have been so successful to new circular supply chains. And what that means is no longer this focus of let's just sell it to a customer and good luck, but thinking more and more as manufacturers and retailers and supply chain people, how can we get value from the product even after it's been sold? How can we bring it back into the supply chain? How can we remanufacture it? How can we repair it? How can we recycle it? And to give you an idea of how big the opportunity is on this one, I again refer to these little devices here. I don't know if you know, but they say that less than 10% of these products at the moment are either recycled or remanufactured. Less than 10%, and these are expensive products. Now, first when I heard that figure, I thought that's ridiculous. But to be honest, then I start to think about the number of mobile phones I've got in my cupboard and my drawers at home, and actually I don't think that's far wrong. So there's a huge opportunity for companies who can exploit this circular supply chain, I believe. So these are the 3 big trends that we see, and this is what we as Panalpina are helping companies to do. Because to move your supply chain from this one on the left, that's been so successful for 15, 20 years, very complex, involves lots of different companies, to move to these is not easy. It's not quick. There's a lot of work to be done. So as Panalpina now, I apologise, the next slide is a bit more sales slide, just to explain some of the things that we are doing as Panalpina to help companies move towards this new personalised supply chain of the future. And the On this next slide, you can see here some of the services that we offer as Panalpina on the bottom. Now we offer these all across the world. We offer them we have around 200 manufacturing and logistics facilities all around the world. But we also have a very strong presence here in UK, including a little factory, a little operation that we've got here in Manchester. So if anyone needs or requires any of these services, I'd be delighted to come and speak to you after this presentation to discuss any way that we could help. And I've put here my contact details in case anyone would like to contact me to discuss in more detail any of these topics that I've mentioned. If you don't want to talk to me, I fully understand. But if you are interested in the research, I've put the website here at Cardiff University where you can click and download some of the information of some of the research that we've done. And lastly, if you're jealous and you'd like a World Cup too, or you'd like to understand a little bit more about how 3D printing and additive manufacturing is changing global supply chains, we've got a small workshop at Cardiff University on the 15th of March. And if anyone would like to join, please just let me know after the conference and I'd be happy to give you some more details. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.